Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation. Uh, Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation. Joining my good friends, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky of Anshe Chesed, New York City, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Sheikh, the Day School of Long Island. And first, we want to say Mazel Tov, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Rabbi Amy Kalmanovsky. Beautiful, beautiful
Thank you.
wedding this past Sunday, Dasi to Greg, and what a lovely, lovely, beautiful simcha it was that these two lovely young people are joined together, creating their own home now, and it was beautiful, fantastic, and just spellbinding. And
I'm still on cloud 10.
yeah, exactly. And we begin noting today 756. While the hostages have been released, the 11 bodies still remain in Gaza, and we pray that they are found and returned as soon as they can be returned, that the ceasefire holds, and that whatever the next chapter is, we will be in the next chapter, knowing, of course, that it's not going to be simple, even as we record this today. Lots and lots of very complicated and difficult things are taking place in Israel, and but we'll leave that for another conversation. We want to talk about Lekh Lekha, and it's true that Lekh Lekha, this parsha, is the parsha that begins the Jewish story. And even saying it's the Jewish story is almost an anachronism because Abraham, always spoken of as the first Jew, is not technically the first Jew. Um, and he is Ivri, he is a Hebrew. Of course, the term Jew doesn't come into the vocabulary till way, way, way into the biblical, at the after the biblical era. But for all intents and purposes, he's our ancestor, and our story begins with Abraham, and our story begins with God saying to him, "Lech Lecha," and uh, and the immortal words that you shall be a blessing, Veye Bracha. Um, we didn't talk about this to begin, but I just want to get your vote on this, which is it's Lech Lecha me'artzecha, go forth from your land, your birthplace, your father's household to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. Veye Bracha. So the Vav in Veye Bracha could be, and you shall be a blessing, okay, which is the imperative, and that's been our traditional interpretation. What about, I'm just going to float this as a point, get your reaction. What about so that you will be a blessing?
Right. I think that's what makes the most sense, actually.
Yeah.
It's sequential. You do this, and this will happen.
And therefore you will be a blessing. And therefore you will be a blessing. So it's the blessing is a consequence of all of the things that happen to you, including this transition.
Right. But there's also a counter story here because this is all very passive, right?
On
God's going to
Abraham.
make him a great nation, and he's going to bless him. And Abraham will not bless, but will be a blessing.
Right. And so while we've always kind of looked at this as an imperative, the final clause in this little introduction, "V'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama," could be understood the same way. And therefore, all of the families of the earth shall be blessed through you. And there you have it. That's the main goal, which is here, I want to establish something, a relationship with you. I want you to have this journey, and therefore you will be a blessing because of all the things I give you, because of the blessing I give to you. And therefore, because of all this, there will be something about you that will bring blessing through the whole world, through all the families of the earth. Through you, all of the world will be blessed, and which means through you, the blessing power, because of you and because of my relationship with you, the blessing power will radiate from you to the rest of the world, and that's what I want. God wants blessing into the world. God wants life in the world. God wants that kind of direct connection, and through Abraham, God will be that is through Abraham, blessing will come into the world, and and if you like Abraham, you'll get it. And if you don't, you won't get it. So,
Right, and there seems to be an implication that the nations of the world will recognize in Abraham this blessing quality.
right. And so that they won't necessarily have to be part of his family, but by simply admiring Abraham and by emulating him and by certainly taking the wisdom or the idea of God, they will themselves become a blessing as well.
So, what do we make of it today? How many Jews do you think see themselves as a blessing, and how many non-Jews look to Jews as a source of blessing?
So I think this is one of the reasons why we spent so much time at Camp Ramah in the Berkshires talking about this, because I think that this idea is so it's not misunderstood, but not known. I mean, it's almost like saying, do Jews know what it means to be Jewish? Well, most Jews, would say, well, I'm Jewish. Well, it's like, do I know what, it's like asking someone about their breath. I breathe. So, I don't need to really think about it. Um, but if we peg the identity of Jews on this formative moment, then a Jew has to reconcile or to recognize that as a descendant of Abraham, your presence here is to bring blessing into the world. That's what we
Right.
said, and that's what you said at the wedding too, Jeremy.
But I really feel like this is it's a little bit on a knife's edge here because this can and should be taken as an imperative to live in a way which confers blessing to the world. That's a heavy responsibility. It's a great power, and that means that when you look at your being Jewish, you kind of should say to yourself, um, how is it that I am a blessing to not only my own nation, which I hope that is true too, but to the other people too, right? And I think in the 20th century, when different iterations of Zionism, like some Zionisms have been, Levrit Am, Laor Goyim, that we are a luminous nation which brings light to the world. And then some versions of Zionism, famously said, well, we should be a state like all the other states. You I think Ben Gurion said, when a Jewish cop arrests a Jewish burglar, then we'll know we're a state like all the other states. I don't find that latter one, that let's be a nation like all the other nations, let's be a state like any other state. I find that, of really unworthy of Jewish history and the mission quality, the destiny quality of the Jewish people. So I want our people to say, um, I have to try to be a blessing. And because we do have so many enemies, and Barry, you sort of said, like, do you think the other nations, actually, I think the other nations, for the most part, have not seen us as a source of blessing for all kinds of reasons of competition and rivalry and
Jealousy, envy, shame, fear.
religious, anti-Judaism, not, the Christian story of
Yes.
anti-Judaism, all those things are in place. They have tended to think that we're in fact a malevolent influence. And all too often, I think that Jews have said to themselves, okay, well, we should just worry about ourselves then. I certainly think, there are different iterations of this. This takes different guises, but some of the most extreme nationalisms that one sees in Israel are the opposite of Nivrachu B'cha Kol Mishpachot Adama. They're like La'azazel Kol Mishpachot Adama. Let the rest of the world go to hell.
Right. So and not to be too sympathetic to that, but it arises out of a tremendous cynicism the real experience of Jews who have suffered, terribly at the hands of the nations of the world that have not known you, and that this line that really is the summative line about those who bless you will be blessed, and those who curse you will be cursed. There's a truism to that. The truism is that the nations that have cursed us and invade against us and tried to exterminate us are themselves the loathsome and reprehensible cursed nations. And those that are of the admirers of the Jewish people, they end up sharing a lot of the values, and they are blessed nations. Um, and I the way the question then is, how does one become a blessing? Or is it, will you, because God is blessing you, therefore you will bring that to the rest of the world? In other words, it's almost like saying, and I'll use you as an example, you bless your children under the chuppah, okay? And you give them this tremendous feeling of aura, this light, this tremendous love. And it's with the hope that they're going to take that with them into the world, and that will be shared to everyone. And well, doggone it, that's exactly what happens. We stand at our tables on Friday nights and bless our families, and we convey that great sense of love. And you know what? We hope that that will be shared into the world, that they will go out as vessels of love into the world. They will radiate something, to use the radiation metaphor, the nuclear metaphor, right? They're radioactive with blessing. God is making Abraham, radioactive. And so everyone that Abraham is going to touch is going to get a little bit of that radioactivity. Does that does that
That's what we
work?
want to be.
That's what I want to be. Okay.
That's it.
All right. I want to fast forward to the end of the story, okay? Because I'm troubled by what happens at the end of the story. And I want your help in understanding this moment. The moment is where they Ishmael is already born in the family. And Ishmael is born into the family because Sarah is frustrated. She wants a child. She has Hagar become a surrogate for her, and Abraham, acquiesces to what Sarah wants. Ishmael is born, and then God comes into the picture and says, "No, you're going to have a child, and you're going to have a child through Sarah." And this is in the passage where Abraham gets his name Avraham, and Sarai gets her name as Sarah. This is chapter 17, verse 15. Vayomer Elohim el Avraham Sarai, Ishtecha lo tikrat Shema Sarai. Her name will not be called Sarai anymore. Sarah Shema. Her name shall be Sarah. Uverachti ota. I'm going to bless her in the same way that, by the way, the blessing of the beginning of the Parsha. And I'm also going to give her through you to you a son. Uverachtiha, and I will bless her. And it will be for nations and kings of nations. There will ensue from her. And it's at that point, verse 17, that Vayipol Avraham al panav. He falls on his face, Vayitzchak, and he laughs. Vayomer belibo, and he says in his heart, Halaven me'ashana yivaled. Is a 100-year-old man going to bring forth a child? V'im Sarah, and Sarah too. Habat shivim, tishim shana teled. A 90-year-old woman going to have a child? So I want to get the intonation of this, and I want to understand what the laughter is, because I am confused that the whole tradition sees in this laughter, joy. He's happy about this. And I don't see the glee here as much as I see the irony, and maybe the sarcasm, or maybe the cynicism, and even worse, the sardonic quality of this laughter, huh? You know, and I don't know which tone to give it. I mean, I often think, in reading this, one of the exercises I like to do in studying and teaching is like, okay, so you're directing this play and you have the Abraham actor here. And so you tell the Abraham actor, okay, you got this line here, and figure out your emotion here. Is it, huh?
Well, you should ask them what kind of laugh it is,
Well, that's
right? What's
it.
the quality of the laugh itself? So, what I would suggest is that with Abraham, it's the laughter of wonder, of a kind of amazement. And with Sarah, it's a nervous laughter. Because I think one of the things that might distinguish Abraham from Sarah is that things may have happened too late for Sarah. And if I remember correctly, she never speaks to Isaac. Right after he's weaned, there's no
There's no
interchange between
relationship. The
Sarah and Isaac.
the weaning,
Abraham
yeah.
at least takes his son to go kill him. Um, but like Abraham seems to have aged better than Sarah. Like I sometimes imagine Sarah thinking this should have happened years ago when I could enjoy it. Now it's wonderful, but I can't really enjoy it the way I would like to enjoy it.
And not only that, I mean, there is that the weaning is about taking Isaac out of the world of women and putting him into the world of men, you know. And really, I think quite rightly, as you said, it's really separating him from his mother and putting him under the orbit of his father. Jeremy, I mean, if you're going to direct Abraham in this play here, joy, happiness, laughter, giddiness, or
Bellini, Truffaut.
Fellini, definitely Fellini. um, well, because this story is going to be, paralleled in the next parsha, and Isaac, obviously, it's an etiology story. Why is it called Isaac? Because when Abraham heard, he laughed, and God says you should name him Isaac. When Sarah laughs, that seems to be valence negatively. And then when he's finally born, Sarah says, uh, Abraham laughs Billy Bo. Sarah laughs Bekir Ba. He laughs in his heart. She laughs at, inwardly, although Bikir Ba, the Midrash reads it as she laughed at her inner organs, like that is internal organs. That is to say, what is like that's going to happen. Um, but then when the baby's finally born, she says, Tzchok asali Elohim, kol hashomea yitzachak li. Everyone who hears about it will laugh. And I wonder if there's so why is Sarah's laughter valence negatively when the words are almost the same, and Abraham's laughter clearly valence positively? One can ask oneself whether the stories are just, a little overdetermined that they're always going to reflect well on the patriarch and more ambivalently on the matriarch. But that phrase "tzchok asali Elohim" might it mean God played a joke on me? Kol hashomea yitzachak li. Everyone who hears will laugh at me. Is she feeling when it comes up next week that she's being mocked, and Abraham, who has been getting these promises, now sees the promise fulfilled? She's been at this for 25 years. She only did the little surrogacy arrangement after 10 years of childlessness. So this is already now another 15 years on from that. Um, it's I think that her laughter might be uh, a little bit frustrated, like, what does a person got to do here? I've been doing my best, and you're just yanking me around, and then finally, in this kind of almost uh, ridiculous way, you finally give me the big prize at the end. Whereas Abraham, I think, I think I'll go a little bit close to like Barry said, wonder that the promise is at long last fulfilled.
I'm thinking about, and I tried to do a little research on this. I haven't, been as successful as I wanted. There are people who study laughter, and that laughter is a mechanism which, we take it for granted, um, but but laughter is an equalizer in some way. Laughter is a way to express what in one experience of laughter, it's an experience of discomfort, um, or it's there's in a sense that you are establishing an equality between people when we have our conversations and we laugh with each other. It's because we recognize things. We are building the relationship among the three of us. Let's say in our conversations, uh, it's not because we're genuinely funny, although you know some of us
No, no,
are.
we are genuinely
We are
funny.
genuinely funny. Um, but, this is not a funny moment. Although whenever I get up and talk about this, and there are some elder women in the shul, and I say, think about this. God is saying to a 90-year-old woman that you're going to have a child, and they actually get a lot of joy out of that. They get a lot of humor out of that. They go like, "Oh, that's hysterical." And in a way, it's like I, I, I'm troubled by it, but I shouldn't be troubled by it. The Torah is always going to be filled with different ways to look at this. In one way I look at this, I actually think that Abraham is the one that's being quite negative here. Vayipol Avraham al panav is to me, it's like it's such a frustration for him. He has had nothing but frustration with God from the very beginning, from Lekh Lekha alone. If you read carefully, he goes to all of these different places, and then you know when he's in the land, he has to go to Egypt. Why does he have to go to Egypt? Because the land, it can't sustain him. And so it's like, wait a minute, God, you told me to go to this land. You told me it would be a blessing. You told me all these wonderful things, and now I'm going to die if I
Right, but
don't.
ironically, he's sustained by the Egyptian handmaid.
So isn't that it is ironic. It's like I'm choosing to survive, and I'm going to go against what you want in order to survive. I'm choosing to have a child, and it's going against what you want because you wanted the child to be originally from me and Sarah, but we're not waiting for you.
Well,
And and
there's nothing in the Bible and nothing in the Judaism that descends from the Bible. Um, the thought that you should just, I mean, okay, there's not nothing. The Red Sea is probably the example. Um, the we should just wait and let God do his thing. In fact, you're always supposed to be a partner, and so Abraham, like God says, have a child. You get busy, and so of course he got busy, and this was necessary. I mean, Abraham, you know, there's a major moral episode in this parsha, which is when they do go down to Egypt, and all of this in that Genesis 13, or I guess it's still chapter 12, um, scene in which they go down to Egypt is prefiguring what's going to happen in the Exodus, because they go down to Egypt and then they get held in slavery, and Sarah's in the Pharaoh's palace, and then and and he says, that they will kill me and keep you alive, which is exactly what happens with the boys and the girls uh, in the Egyptian episode in Shmot. And and it's very clear, by the way, that unlike the episode with Avimelech, where the Torah explicitly says that God protected Sarah from sexual violation, in this case it says she was taken in the Pharaoh's palace, and you will see the translations will usually say taken into Pharaoh's palace, but don't be fooled. She is taken in Pharaoh's palace, but then afterwards they leave Birachush Gadol. They leave with great wealth, and so this is all prefiguring what's going to happen then. But Abraham, Nachmanides says in the great comment, this is Abraham did a terrible, terrible sin in surrendering Sarah to Pharaoh, and that's why exile is decreed on the people, and that's perhaps why in the Torah's narration, perhaps that's having to do, has something to do with the childlessness. Maybe she wasn't so quick to try again after what he did. Maybe there was a divine punishment for what he did that extended out the barrenness period. I think that the negativity that the frustration may have a number of sources, and not all of them are really to be laid at God's feet. I think that Abraham has plenty to blame himself for.
Again, going back to the complexity of this scene and the it's so many vectors of their lives flowing into this, including the frustration, including the relationship with God, including the relationship with Sarah, including the relationship with Hagar, and and really, I think also a relationship with himself, his own self-understanding. Think about it. He has been childless himself for uh, well, at least 86 years. He becomes a father at 86. So his own self-understanding is I'm alone in the world, or I won't have any progeny, and it's a real struggle with him. And you see you see his moral pain. Well, you'll see it next week when God basically says you have to listen to Sarah and eject Hagar and Ishmael from the household, um, because here Abraham is um, tremendously loyal to the people that he has around, and notwithstanding the difficulty that he has with all of them. Um, so just we have just a minute left or two. Characterize Abraham and his relationship with God here, if you will. I mean, and you know he is the person who trusts in God. Um, and what does God really want from him? And is there anything you could add to um, a portrait of Abraham as it's emerging here by the end of the Parsha? What kind of man is this man?
Well, I not that long ago had a conversion candidate have a full circumcision, and he did it with such commitment. I mean, going to the mikveh is, it can be awkward or foreign. Adult male circumcision,
That you mean it.
you
That's the
mean it.
real deal.
You mean it. Um, and so the end of the parsha. I mean, this was Shai's bar mitzvah portion, and I remember his dvar. It was really quite nice. It's Lekh Lekha. God says to Abraham, "Go." God appears to Abraham at the Brit Bein HaBetarim. Goes from auditory to visual to signed in that is sealed in his body. So I feel like the intensification of the divine, quoting Shaya Kalmanovsky on this one, the intensification of his relationship, and then it's going to be even more intense next week with the binding of Isaac. I feel like this guy has reached, like I said, I think the early part of this parsha is morally very difficult. Uh, Maybe next week will be too, but I feel like this guy has reached a very intense, intimate level of commitment.
Very.
So what I would say is that Abraham has bitachon, a certain confidence in God, which allows him to listen to God's voice, but also to challenge him when he thinks that the voice is less than clear. And the interesting thing about Abraham, I think, is that he never abandons God. And there are times when you would think in this parsha and next week for sure, when you might say to yourself, "Well, it's time to leave." And he doesn't. And I think in this sense, he provides a model to us because you have to keep the conversation going. That's the job of Abraham, to continue the dialogue with God into the future.
So interesting. It all speaks to the depth of his humanity. There's a tremendous humanity that's emerging through this, despite all of the challenging situations, the awkwardness and really the impossibilities that he is being challenged with. including parenthood at this late stage. And of course, next week's Parsha, the sacrifice of Isaac. But what you see here, and I think we're reading between the lines, is his humanity. So what you've helped me do is understand the word Vayitzchak as a kind of portal into his soul, a portal into his humanity. And no matter how we see that, whether it's a sardonic laughter, or a just a kind of ironic laughter, or just even uh, uh, huh, this kind of a very, very plaintive laughter. What we have here is a human being whose the shades of his humanity are emerging for us more and more as we get to know him. Look, we've said in the past, Abraham is really one of the great characters of the Bible. There's not much to not like about him, although there are things that are puzzling, like you said, Jeremy, at the beginning of the parsha. There are things in his relationship with Sarah there that are quite problematic. Um, but we'll have to leave it where we are bringing this to a conclusion, where the parsha brings it to a conclusion. He's being promised that he's going to have a child, and spoiler alert. Uh, it happens. Okay. In the meantime, we thank you for joining us for this Parsha discussion, our Parsha talk. We so value your attention and your commitment to us. It's such an honor that we have hundreds of viewers and listeners all over the world. And really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Have
Thank
a
you very
wonderful
much.
Shabbat, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. And we'll see you
Shabbat
next week
shalom.
on the next edition of Parsha Talk. Bye bye.